In life, family is arguably the most important thing that we can have and confide in. Family serves as a support system in all our endeavors, people that we can turn to for emotional advice and venting, and just to share life's many wonders with. It is also vital to note that we as humans are always drawn to shared experiences, and because of this, when we share different activities or memories with people, our bond with them is increased and our feeling of connectedness with these people is heightened. Now, while we may all agree that having family time is essential, it is true that in our world today, we often push this to the side because it is so busy and self-centered. And because our schedules seem to always be packed and our plates to always be full, we put family time on the back burner. And I'm here today to tell you that this is really a problem that we need to address. And I'm here to give you ways that we can address it. To look into this problem further, we can focus in on three main points. The first is to actually recognize that there is an issue that we face in lackluster quality time when it comes to spending it with family. Then we can look on to what viable options we can pursue to address these issues. And then I will focus in and hone in on one option that I believe proves to be the most practical, realistic, and applicable, allowing you to start as soon as today. Now, before I get started, it is important to define what I mean by family. So you might be wondering, what does the term family really represent? Now, honestly, this can be a pretty subjective term because it can mean many things depending on the individual and context. For example, things that it could represent are your immediate family, extended family, legal guardians, friends that take you in, spouse or significant other, and many other things, because not every family is a family in the traditional sense that we might know it as. But through this presentation, I'm going to, in general, be talking about the people that you cohabitate with for an extended period of time, but I will mostly allude to your direct relatives. Now, to first understand this problem or this hurdle in this scenario, we can first look at my family story. So in these pictures, you can see me, my brother Dane, my dad Timothy, and my mom Holly. Now, we were a pretty ordinary family in the traditional sense, and one thing that we did in the past that was really good is we would often dedicate a lot of time to one another and sharing activities. What encouraged this is that during most of my childhood, my dad would travel for his work as he worked for a company called Harmonic, which was based in California. So he would be all over the country. And my mom was a stay-at-home mom. So whenever my dad would be back from a trip, we would make sure to spend that limited time we had with quality activities because, sometimes my dad would be gone for a week and we'd only have maybe a weekend until he was back out in another state. So we would often take the time that we did have with him and use it to the best of our ability. Some of the things that we did together include family vacations annually, and we went to many cool places such as Hawaii, Alaska, Jamaica, and many other places, whether it be local beaches in Delaware, or just other camps or hiking trails, anything like that. One thing that we prioritize that most families do is dinner time, because when my dad decided to have a job that was more local, every night he would usually be home in time for dinner, and through this we could talk about our days, catch up with one another. And while most families just consider this to be a trivial thing, it actually helps in feeling more connected. And the families who oppose this and often just eat by themselves in their rooms, or sometimes they're too busy and they just have to fend for themselves, often feel a lot more isolated than they would otherwise. Another thing we would always do is, entertainment stuff, such as the Wii console, where we play Wii Sports, Wii Party, or other games that we had. And we often frequented board games such as Chutes and Ladders, Candyland, and we played a game called Wahoo, and is also known as Chinese checkers, where we'd have a board and we would have colored marbles that we would move around in a star pattern, and I always thought it was really fun. But eventually this all came to a downfall when my parents eventually got divorced. Now, looking back on this, instead of moping, I can realize that there were possible inactions that maybe led to this. Because when I take an objective stance on it, my dad would eventually start staying later and later at work, and we wouldn't have time for dinner. And when I look at it and realize that the family time, while we didn't really have a formal schedule for it ever, it started to be put to the side and pushed on the back burner. And eventually, months and maybe even years went by, and we didn't really have time where we would dedicate it, even though my dad wasn't traveling all the time. We often just took this time for granted, and it ended up in this ultimatum. But this isn't the only ultimatum that a lack of family time can lead to. Lackluster family time might not end up in a divorce, but another common trend that we can see is through subpar or non-existent family time, a lot of children can feel isolated, whether it be youth or teenagers. They need a family structure or connectedness with their parents as they journey through this stage of their life. But families might not actually do this intentionally, but when parents are caught up in business related things or extracurriculars, and they don't set time aside for their children, they can often feel excluded, alone, and this is never ideal because they need a parent structure in their life. Now, as Crowder, Head, McHale, and Tucker note, in part due to the time demands and hectic pace of parents' jobs, families are becoming time poor. As a result, children and youth are losing important opportunities to spend time with their families, and parents are missing chances to connect with their offspring and with each other. And this is a great quote, in my opinion, and it shows just how busy we are and how to ourselves we can be, where we often don't take a step back and realize, maybe we should spend time with the people who matter to us most. Now, the trends don't stop here, because there are other major problems that come when family time is deprioritized. Bittman and Fulbury note that declines in family size have played a role, reducing overall demands on parental time. The time crunch that many families experience seems to reflect efforts to devote quality time to children despite increased participation in paid employment. So, even when parents get home from a busy day at work or have different areas where they make income, they still get home and are so worn out or just have no energy to set time aside for their children that they are just to themselves or even their spouse. This can affect, because when it comes to family, we are with these people all the time, and these people are important to us for as long as we live. But whenever we kind of just take them for granted and don't dedicate the time that we need to, it just ends up excluding others, and it reflects just how little we care, maybe not intentionally. And also, Khalil, Ryan, and Core note that given positive links between parental time investments and children's development, parents' time investments could plausibly account for some of the observed differences in child outcomes across complex family structures. Now, what this quote means is that we often take a lot from our parents, and when our parents set an example of not prioritizing family time, we can often pass this down to our kids when we eventually have them, or if we have them, and this can be detrimental. Now, on the other hand, if a parent would take the time aside and actually set a good example and show and set time aside, for family time, the kids will understand the importance of it and spread it to their future children and generations. Now that we know the cons of all of this, we can now look at the benefits of family time. Now, there are many, and starting with a quote the author wrote, "Joint activities help forge a sense of togetherness that is crucial for child development by enhancing relationships and facilitating communication between family members. For adolescents, family time can also be an important respite from the frenzied world of peers and the demands of school." I find this to be a really relatable and good point to make, because when we get to middle school or high school and we get overwhelmed, or even college, when we get overwhelmed with assignments, we often need people to lean on for stress or to just vent to. And family, when we communicate with them and have strong bonds and relationships, they can help us get through these rough times. And also, as triple notes, family night is an opportunity to put the phone away and give all your attention to your children. When your focus is on them, they will feel the love and safety that they crave. Now, as I said earlier, children in this time of life, in this stage of life, need that parental attention and care. And sometimes when parents get caught up in devices or just other extracurriculars, the children feel like they take second place when it comes to their phone or their prior commitments. But when the parents take time aside and show the children that, whatever they're watching, maybe a TV show or the phone, that their children come first, this can really set a great example and improve the child's interpretation of what their parents' nonverbals are communicating. There are other pros that I will mention, and one of them is also from Crowder, Head, McHale, and Tucker. And in their study, they found a modest negative association between total family time and firstborn's risky behavior. So the more time families spent together, the less likely firstborns were to engage in risky behavior. And I agree with this because I can see in the families that I've encountered that when there are good parental structures and quality family time, and they don't just leave the kids to their own devices, they are often a lot more connected with their parents and trusting, and do not sneak behind their backs and do things that they would otherwise not approve of. So when parents give their undivided attention to their kids, it can work wonders. Daly also notes that the pleasure of family time was not in the present moment, but was expected to be available as a kind of dividend somewhere down the road. Now, this comments on parents wanting to spread traditions from past generations to their future kids. And I agree with this because Wahoo, as I mentioned earlier, the game, was something that my dad played as a kid and wanted us to play. And I feel like this is a great benefit of family time, as it can help us connect with past generations of our family and spread traditions to future ones. Now, there are many options that we can pursue to increase family time and the benefits that we already mentioned and how we can apply them to our lives. Now, one that is the most commonly seen amongst families is regular family dinner. As Offer notes, to improve children's emotional well-being, working parents should have more opportunities to engage in leisure activities and, especially for fathers, eat meals with their children. This goal can be achieved, for example, by implementing policies that increase worker schedule control. And this can be seen as something that the companies can also take in as a burden, because when a provider of a family, whether it be the father or mother, when they are overwhelmed with work, they often do not have time to eat with their family. And this can be pretty detrimental, as whenever you eat with people, you can catch up with them and have a sort of connectiveness. And whenever we prioritize this can be a really good thing. So it is up to us and maybe companies to give workers that time where they can spend that time with their families. And Thatcher notes, with the right kind of activities, time with family can positively impact physical well-being. For instance, families who eat home-cooked meals together tend to have a better diet than those who don't. And this is true because whenever we cook at home, we often have less calories and more healthy options, opposed to families who stress takeout or fast food every night, which is a really good thing to note. Another thing that we can do is set time aside weekly for family activities and shared experiences, whether it be movies, TV shows, sharing stories, spending time near a campfire, or anything like that. And Parenting NI notes that studies have found that families who enjoy group activities together share a stronger emotional bond, as well as an ability to adapt well to situations as a family. Share your favorite hobbies, sports, books, movies, or other favorite activities. This applies to me because me and my mother have just started a TV show called Euphoria, and my mother and brother watch a show called All American a lot. And I am a pretty big movie buff, so whenever we all three sit down on the couch and watch a movie together, sometimes it's one that we want to share with others, or sometimes it's one that we haven't seen yet and want to experience together. I feel like this is time really well spent as we connect through this entertainment medium. One last option that I will touch on is family vacations and adventures. As I noted in the past, whenever I took annual vacations with my family, I felt very connected with them as we explored this new place or a place we've already been to and just had fun and time off. And this is important because whenever parents get overwhelmed with work, taking time off to just spend with their kids is really beneficial. And just this experience of adventure or exploring new things can really boost dopamine. And whenever we share it with other people, it can increase our bonds. Now, the only downside to this is it can be really costly and occasional because not everyone goes on vacation every year, and sometimes the vacations can be quite expensive. So, whenever I'm honing in on the one that I feel is the most effective and the best course of action for all of us today, it comes down to the weekly family time. Now, as Crowder, Head, McHale, and Tucker note, although almost in their study, they found that although almost all families reported at least some time in family meals over the 7 days, and about half of all families watched TV together at some point, small numbers of families engaged in active leisure, religious activities, and housework together as a group. Now, again, I feel like it's good to set time aside each week and all agree on it because this is vital. And when we set time aside each week and stick to this time frame, we all agree on, it is true that whenever we experience things together as a family in that time, we can reap the benefits, but it's important not to miss this because when we do, even a couple times, it becomes a habit of pushing it to the back burner again. And also, it's important to note, like we saw in the quote, it isn't just about TV or watching meals or anything like that. We need to find a balance with other things like active leisure, attending church together if you are a religious family, or even doing chores together. It can be really beneficial in being more connected with your family and feeling less isolated on an individual scale. Now, it is also important to know, why should I care about these things, or why are you telling me this? In my opinion, I think this is more timelier than ever because during the COVID-19 pandemic, when we were all cooped up with our families, we often didn't spend that much time with them. And I don't know about you, but there were times where I became very irritable with my family because I was not used to spending so much time with them and we would get on each other's nerves. But this is not something that we want because these family members are our support system and what we use to get through life and all the hardships and good times. So we need to instead not be irritable with one another and appreciate one another, which family time can really help increase. As Silverman notes, humans are social creatures. We need one another, especially under stress. However, we don't need other people to solve our problems for us, which families often believe is their role. We need each other to feel less alone. We need to support one another while maintaining healthy boundaries and showing mutual respect, which is important. And sometimes whenever we are going under stress, whether it be because of the pandemic or other things, we need to not just lecture them and tell them what they need to do, but empathize with them and understand where they're coming from. They also note that no virus can undo a family when its members decide to band together in solidarity. And this is true and important because whenever we focus on family time, we can see that no adversity that we face can ever bring us down. Now, my concluding thoughts are that I myself this summer am going to really emphasize this point and make sure and talk with my family and implement a set time frame each week where we spend time with one another and make sure that we don't miss this because this is really important and these benefits are numerous. And when we don't, we can see that there are many cons and we want to avoid these. Another point that I want to make is life is not always guaranteed and time is also not guaranteed. So it is important to not take this for granted. And all the people that mean a lot to you, especially extended family and grandparents who may not be with us much longer, it is important to be with them and experience family time and not just isolate yourselves because we will regret it later down the road if we do not. Here are some of my references for you all if you wanted to do some future reading. And I wanted to thank you all for listening. Through my message, I hope you all can understand just how important it is to put family first, spend time with them when you have the chance, and the numerous evident benefits that come along with this shared time. I also want to call you all to action to speak with your families and set up, if you do not already have one set up, a weekly shared time where you can watch a show together, play board games, or anything that you might prefer so that you can reap these benefits and become more connected with the people that mean the most to you. Thank you.